Hi guys, this is Carissa and I am with Inky Fairy Designs and I'm excited to be on the Greeting Farm YouTube channel sharing how I watercolored this cute stamp. It's called Brew It Anya. It's a clear stamp and I just think she's adorable with her little coffee cup. And I stamped her with this Brutus Monroe detail ink in Raven. It's great for watercoloring and alcohol markers. I'm just showing you that I always have 2 jars of water on my desk, a paper towel to wipe off extra pigment or water that I have on my brush. I am using my silver black velvet brushes. This is the number 4 round, but I pretty much stick, I think, with the number 4 round is the smallest one, and then I do pull out a detail brush later on for the hair. I use my Jane Davenport watercolors for all of the skin tones, and then I have my Daniel Smith watercolors that I use for the rest of the painting. So I stamped on this a Strathmore watercolor paper. It is a card and it's already folded and pre-scored and all of that, so it's great to make quick cards, and it's already watercolor paper. So I stamped my image on that using a Misty so that I could stamp several times and get a good clear impression. Then I'm coming in, and for most of my watercoloring until we get to the background, I am doing a wet on dry watercolor technique, which basically means that my paper is dry and then I apply the paint and then I blend it out with my brush and water. So I always usually start with the skin tone. I just love bringing that color in first and kind of giving her some personality, and then I'll move on to the rest of the image. So you can see I blend a few colors, and all I do, what I was doing there was I was explaining how I jump around the image when I'm watercoloring. So I don't want to watercolor a part of the image that is right next to something that I just watercolored. And I mentioned this in my last video, and I mention it in every single watercolor video that I have on my YouTube channel because it's important. If you have a spot that you've just painted and then you go in and try to paint an area next to it, you can run into where it will blend into each other, and usually that's not what we want. So I jump around a lot from the image, and then I also jump around and use like the same color in different areas. So for her purse and the coffee cup, I'm using the same browns, and that just ties the whole image together and gives it some continuity. I'm also using those same browns for her boots and the little bear clip in her hair, and I can change the tone of that just by the amount of pigment that I have on my brush, or I can add a little red to it or a little more brown to it. It just depends, but it's the same like color and it just makes the whole image cohesive. So I'm coming in, I'm painting her little shirt this really pretty green color, and then I just decided to add that little circle icon that I think we all know what that means. We know what store she was and where she got her coffee. So I just want to add a little bit of shading to the cup. It is white. I want to keep it white, but I just add a little shading here and there so it's not flat and it gives it some dimension. And I use not a black paint for that. It's more of a kind of has a blue tint to it. I don't remember exactly what color it is, but I like the little blue shade that it has to it. And in the end, I go back over the image and add more shading with that same color, and that again, I like to use the same colors and bits and pieces on my image just to make it all go together and look nice. So I'm finishing up her scarf, and I do have this sped up 4 times the actual painting that I did, but I'm gonna slow it down when I get to her hair, because one of the great things about the Greeting Farm images is that hair. And so here I've slowed it down, and I want to really show you what I'm doing, because this is what I'm doing in the whole image, but you can really see it in that big area of the hair. So I take my color on my paintbrush and I'm going around the edges where I want it darkest. So wherever I want those darkest shades, that's where I'm going to lay down my paint first. And then I'm going to come in and I will clean my brush off and pull out that pigment with some clean water. And but first I'm just mixing up the paint. So you can see I kind of mix up the paint on my palette and water it down a little bit, and then I bring it to my image and I'm just going around still, taking it piece by piece, and this is just preference. I like to work in pieces in the hair, and so I'm just going around that whole area there, and now I'm cleaning off my brush and I'm going to start to pull out that color. So I start in the white area, get it wet, and once that area is wet and it touches the paint, it's gonna start to blend it out automatically. So there's nothing really that you have to do, because all of that blending and shading is gonna work itself out as you add that water. So then I add a little bit more color here and there where I want really that darkest color and shading to be, like around her bangs, around the clip, around her bun. And so I'll add more paint there, and then I'll just continue to blend it out with more water and with more color. And so this is again why I always have a paper towel, right? It's like always in my left hand, so that I can just easily take my paintbrush over and dab it off if it's got too much water or if it has too much pigment on it. And so now you can see I'm doing the same thing here with her little bang area, and then I'm going to go over to the other side of her hair and do the same thing. So I think it helps to kind of see it in real time, because a lot of times I know in my videos, just for time's sake, it's nice to speed it up so you can kind of see the whole process happen and come together, but it's also nice to see it in real time, bits and pieces here and there, so you can see that it does take, we're not speed painters in real life. It's just kind of slowly adding the paint, cleaning off the paintbrush, bringing in that color into the white areas, and then letting that water do a lot of the blending on its own. Now I do let my image, when I'm jumping around here and there, I let the image air dry and settle and the paint dry on its own, but also I do use my heat tool a lot of times. Because they're small images, if I don't want to set it off to the side and come back to it later, I can use my heat tool and dry that area so that I can go into the next area. And I also love, if I get too much color in there, I can use my paper towel and dab some of that color off. So that's also a great thing. And I do that again later. You'll see, I feel like, and you can do it at any time. It doesn't have to be right when it's wet, when you're painting it. I come in later onto the hair and just use some clean water and get it wet, and then I can use my paper towel to pull that pigment off, because it's watercolor, it's going to reactivate, and I can do that at any time. So adding a little bit of cheeks here. For the cheeks, I did blend like the skin tone that I had already mixed on my palette with a little bit of pink, and I think that just really makes it kind of more natural, rather than just adding just pink without mixing that skin tone that I already used. It just kind of blends it in nicer. So I started adding a little bit of texture to her hair, but later on I changed to a even more detail, like a zero round, and add better detail to her hair. So I realized I didn't paint her legs, so I'm giving her some little leggings or tights, and then I'm deepening up those shadows. That's that bluish black color. I think it might be indigo, or it might be Payne's gray. I'm not exactly sure, but here you can see I'm using that exact same color to deepen up some of those shadows. On the green, I think I do a little bit on her face and her boots. And then I do mix that color with the purple that I used in her hair and add that texture later. So when you're watercoloring, you just kind of use the colors that are on your palette and mix them with new colors, or the same colors and mix them together, and that just really kind of makes them all blend and match and really makes that image look like it's just meant to be. So here I am, I'm taking that water like I mentioned earlier and lightening up her hair, and that was already completely dry. So I didn't like the way that it was looking. So I'm just using that water and kind of activating that paint again, and then using my paper towel to dab it off. And I love that. So I was able to lighten that so that when it's dry, after I add the background, I can come in and add those little detail strands. So for the background, this is where I go in and I do the wet on wet technique. So instead of my paper being dry and adding the pigment to it, I love the kind of like soft watercolor backgrounds that just happen on their own. So I like to wet the area around the image, and then I'll come in and bring my paint and let it kind of do its thing and blend and move in that water. And you can see how it kind of just starts to kind of feather out into the water that I have there. And what's great about watercolor is that it's not going to go anywhere where I don't have water on the paper, unless I bring water to the paper and start and soften that line out. So I love that, and I'm just going to finish doing that. I like to keep the darker color closest to the image to give that shading and dimension, and then I will just drop in bits of pigment and color around and let it move in the water and blend. And then you'll see I'll take some clean water on my brush and just soften up those edges, that just so it doesn't have like a harsh line around the edge. I really like it to be super intense around the image and then just fade out into nothing. And so I create this kind of like stormy sky for her, and then bringing in some greens for the ground underneath her. And I used a bright green, but then I ended up bringing in and dropping in the same green that I used on her shirt. And again, I just like to do that because, like I said, it keeps that whole image the continuity, keeps it together and keeps it matching. And so I'm just checking to see if my image is dry before I come in and add some details, white details with my gel pen. And I think this is the Jelly Roll white gel pen. The new formula in these pens are amazing. I do like the Uniball white gel pen as well, but I found that Jelly Roll really upped their game when they came out with their new ones, and they're pretty awesome. So here I switched to this super fine detail. I think it's a 0 round. It's a Princeton watercolor brush, and I mixed up some of that that blue-gray color that I was using for the shading on the cup and the shading on my image. I mixed that with the same purple that I used in her hair. Now I'm just coming in and just adding that detail, the detail of the strands of her hair. And I just think that adds such dimension, and it's fun to do. It's super easy to do, and it really brings the image to life. So that's it. It's super simple. I don't like to do a whole lot when I watercolor images, especially on a card like this. I don't add any embellishments. I'm going to stamp a sentiment from the same stamp set, and that's it. My image is done. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, thank you to the Greeting Farm for inviting me back to share with you some more of my watercolor techniques. And if you want to see more, you can go ahead and visit my channel. It's called Inky Fairy Designs. I will put a link to it here that you can check out. And then also I'm going to put a subscribe to the Greeting Farm channel because they always have awesome guests here for you sharing new fun techniques. So until next time, guys, stay creative, be inspired, and go make something today. Bye.